This coming Shabbos, we begin Sefer Vayikra with Parshas Vayikra. The last Shabbos, Parshas Vayikra Lepekudei, we concluded the building of the Mishkan. Now, in Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Vayikra, we begin to talk about what is done in the Mishkan. Most notably, the bringing of korbanos, the bringing of sacrifices to Hashem. And for us, in the world that we live in today, sometimes this is challenging to connect to. How is it that we connect to the idea of bringing korbanos when we've never brought a korban in our lives? What lesson can we take away from the concept of korbanos? So Tiferet Shlomo explains as follows in a beautiful way and very practical for us. He says, what was the purpose of bringing korbanos? So the pasuk says, Adam, a person, ki yakriv mikem korban Hashem, who brings from among you a korban to Hashem, a sacrifice to Hashem. So he says, how are we told to become closer to Hashem? By bringing a sacrifice. So he says, look what we learn. We learn a tremendous amount from an animal. How so? Because there's an animal, I have a sheep right next to me, and this sheep is just a regular sheep. And at this moment, this sheep is a regular sheep. It's going to continue to be that sheep that it is right now at this second. But the moment I say this sheep is now a korban, the sheep now changes from being a sheep which is no longer usable for any purpose to anyone in the world, including myself, then to be brought as a korban, a sacrifice to Hashem. The sheep itself physically remains the same, but it has changed. Its status is completely new, and it can no longer be used for any other purpose. Says it to Tiferet Shlomo, it is amazing that this sheep status changed by virtue of what came out of our mouths. A person says, this is Kodesh, this sheep is now considered to be a korban. Through the use of a person's mouth, this sheep was now elevated. This sheep is now Kodesh. And while we no longer have sacrifices, we no longer have korbanos that were makriv in the Beis Hamikdash, but the Tiferet Shlomo says so much can be learned from the process of being makriv, a korban, of just assigning kedusha, sanctity to a korban, because through my mouth, through my words, I just completely changed this animal into a korban to Hashem. And he says that what we learn from here is that the dibur, the speech of a human being, has within it the ability to raise the status of something, to make something holy. And we understand this when it comes to our learning of Torah. We understand this when it comes to our tefillah. We understand this when it comes to the speech that we use and what emanates from our mouths. That we are able to lift something up, to lift its status up, to lift a person up by virtue of what it is that we say, by virtue of how we use our tongue. We can change the status of so much just by how careful we are and what our intent is with that which emanates from within us. May we be zocheh to recognize the power, the koach, the strength of our dibur, and our ability to be makadesh, to sanctify so much in our lives and in this world by the commitments that we make and by the desire that we have to become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We recognize that although we can't bring korbanos, we certainly could offer the kedusha from our mouths. May we be zocheh to strengthen ourselves as we welcome Nisan, to ultimately lift ourselves up on a spiritual level and become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in anticipation of the Chag HaMatzos. Thank you for listening and wishing everyone a good Shabbos.